Now, imagine standing beside the great Emperor Moctezuma. In the year 1519, you'd watch the Spanish conquistador Cortez ride into the city, unsure why he has come. At first, you think he is a god. His armor gleams like the sun. His face is pale as bone, and the feather headdress atop his head is strange indeed. In Nahuatl, they would call him Cuatlatone, meaning the one who speaks with a house of gold. Yet you see the R in the faces around you, so you hide your confusion. Soon Moctezuma will greet Cortez with a great feast, but you cannot help but notice how the emperor's hands tremble. Everyone is tense, and when the Spaniards ask for gold, you see the warrior spirit flicker across Moctezuma's face. He agrees to their demands, yet refuses to yield his eagle cloak, a symbol of the divine mandate. Cortez grows impatient. He wants more, and when the emperor reaches for his precious fan, the conquistadors strike him down. The Spaniards' horses trampled the courtyard, soldiers pressed forward, weapons drawn, and soon, Moctezuma falls victim to smallpox, brought over on the Mayflower. Now, the Spanish rule Tenochtitlan, and even worse fates await. Imagine descending into the earth. Many centuries later, the bustling marketplace is gone, replaced by thick jungle. Vines tangle between the pyramids, trees push up through cracked stone, and the monuments to forgotten gods stand silent against the horizon. For centuries, the Spanish tried to erase every trace of the old religion, destroying statues and burying temples beneath churches. Yet the past is stubborn, tenacious. The roots of vines and fig trees grow in places sacred to the Mexica. Deer roam the ruins. Lizards bask on broken altars. And all around, the forest reclaims the city. You walk slowly through this ruin, taking in the grand scale of the place. It was once called the heart of the two worlds. The gods watched over from the peaks of the pyramids. And here, amid the ferns and broken idols, you feel the distant hum of a half-remembered prayer. The ruins tell only part of the story. Their silence hides the echoes of rituals, births, deaths, banquets, battles, and feasts. It was a place of wonder, yes, but also of struggle. Each block of stone speaks of burdens carried and dreams dreamt. And as you walk among them, you remember the forgotten faces of a great city. Now, imagine floating above the city, soaring with the feathered serpent. You'd glide over rooftops, past broad plazas and towering temples, and deep into the silent sky. Below you, nobles prepare for a great festival. They donned their finest garments, embroidered with gods and monsters. The men wear fine feathers and curious masks. The women carry fragrant flowers and brightly colored banners. The beat of drums and everywhere you look, priests leap and dance, calling on the rain god to send life-giving storms across the thirsty land. But there are other signs tonight, too. Strange lights appear on the distant horizon, growing brighter by the hour. Many stare at them, mouths agape, not knowing that the god of the west has come, riding on a ship of fire. You fall through the clouds and dive toward the earth, eager to witness the coming storm. You know, even as you fly, that there can be no victory against the conquistadors, no escape from the horses, guns, and germs of Europe. But perhaps, just perhaps, you can survive. You tense your wings and brace yourself for impact. To learn more about the Aztec Empire, stay tuned for more information. This is a story from the 1500s, and if you're listening to it right now, there's a good chance you know how it goes. The Aztecs, these people made a mighty empire in what is now Mexico. They built floating gardens and conquered neighbors and worshipped strange gods. And then one day some Spaniards showed up and killed them all. Boom. The end. But here's another version. Same setting, same stakes, but a different story. Once the sun dipped below the horizon, the city stills. But above the hum of crickets, the faint echoes of drums rise again, distant, steady and full of gravity. The capital, Tenochtitlan, does not sleep easily, nor does its ruler. You are no longer in the market. Now you are in the palace, a vast space of smooth stone, colorful murals, feathered thrones, and soft-spoken servants. This is where Moctezuma II resides, ruler of the Mexica people, descendant of gods and speaker of the sun's will. His name means he who frowns like a lord, and history remembers him, above all, for how his rule ended. But to understand that fall, we must first walk quietly through the heavy silence of his reign. Moctezuma II did not inherit ease. Though noble-born, his ascent to power was marked by calculation, ceremony, and blood. He was a priest, a warrior, and a philosopher. He was deeply spiritual and deeply afraid. And he ruled at a time when the Aztec Empire was nearing the peak of its expansion, bloated with tribute, enemies, and unease. In his private chambers, Moctezuma spoke often with diviners and dreams. He asked about omens. He believed in prophecy. The sky had burned. A temple had collapsed. A mirror had shown a vision of warriors on deer-like beasts. The gods were whispering that something was coming. And in the second decade of the 1500s, it arrived. First, as rumor spells, kind men on the eastern shores, wearing metal shells and carrying thunder in their hands. Then, as messengers, desperate, breathless runners arriving at the capital. And then, at last, in the form of a Spaniard named and a few hundred conquistadors who would reshape the world. Moctezuma was paralyzed. He consulted priests. He sent emissaries. He offered gifts, gold, jade, feathered cloaks, perhaps to bribe them, or perhaps as a sacred exchange. Some say he believed Cortez to be the god Quetzalcoatl returned. Others argue he knew the danger but hesitated. Regardless, his indecision left the empire vulnerable. When Cortez arrived in Tenochtitlan in 1519, he was not met with an army. He was welcomed cautiously, ceremoniously into the heart of the city. Moctezuma led him by hand, gave him residence in the palace, showed him temples, allowed him to see the sacred heart of the empire. And for a moment, two worlds stood still, one carved from obsidian and blood, the other forged in steel and greed. Then the collapse began. Cortez took Moctezuma hostage inside his own palace. Though still treated as emperor in public, he became a puppet. Whispers spread. Resentment grew. The city grew restless. Outside, the Spanish plot. Inside, Moctezuma faded. Eventually, the people turned on him. When violence erupted first in the city, then across the empire, Moctezuma was brought before the crowd to calm them, but they hurled stones instead. He was struck, fell, and either died from the wound or was killed soon after. The exact truth remains uncertain. What is clear is this: Moctezuma II died in June of 1520, confined and broken, in the very palace where he once held dominion. And with his death, the Aztec world began its slow, agonizing end. The temples would fall. The gods would be silenced. The markets would become ruins. All that would remain were stories passed down, hidden under centuries of stone and memory. And even now, they echo quietly. This is the host. And this is one of the myths. See you tomorrow. Mexico City is the second largest city in the world. With around 22 million people in its metro area, it's home to more people than 18 of the countries in the world. And like any great city, it's pulsing with traffic, light, and movement. People and cars rushing around, chasing dreams and making money. Skyscrapers scrape the sky above the street food stalls and family homes. There's always somewhere to go, something to see, somewhere deep below the surface. Though, beneath the centuries of footsteps that have paved these streets and the countless lives lived here, something else stirs. Something ancient, something sacred. The heart of an empire, long gone. This is the story of the Great Temple, otherwise known as Templo Mayor. It's one of the most incredible archaeological sites in the world. But you won't find it in some jungle ruin or half-submerged city. You'll find it right in the center of Mexico City, beneath the bustling Zocalo, where shoppers haggle over handicrafts, mariachi bands strike up lively tunes, and the Cathedral of Mexico stands tall. The Great Temple was the ceremonial center of the Aztec world. For 750 years, it dominated the landscape of Tenochtitlan. Standing almost as tall as the Eiffel Tower, it towered over the city like a mountain. And just like a mountain, it grew in size with age, its shape constantly resculpted by the forces of nature and man. In the 15th century, when the Mexica founded their capital, they built a single pyramid dedicated to their patron deity. As time passed, and the city flourished, so did the temple. Under the reign of Acamapichtli, the first ruler of the Triple Alliance, he commissioned the construction of a second shrine at the top of the central platform. This was dedicated to Tlaloc, the god of rain, thunder, lightning, and fertility, also associated with the planet Venus. Two shrines, two staircases rising side by side into the sky, one for war and destruction, one for life and nourishment, each telling only half the story of this extraordinary place. It was here that the most important rituals took place, where priests climbed the steep staircases, carrying flowers, incense, and human hearts. The flow of life, Blood and death were kept in balance through sacrifice, through the giving of the most precious liquid of all. It was during the reign of Tezak, around 1486, that the temple reached its greatest extent. During his rule, the central platform supporting the twin pyramids was enlarged, creating a huge rectangular base that could accommodate enormous crowds. By the end of the 15th century, the Great Temple had become a vast complex covering almost the entire central square of Tenochtitlan. Surrounded by a wide stairway, it was flanked by ball courts and other temples. It was the beating heart of the city, alive with ceremony and pageantry, music and dance, hope and fear. But it was not to last. When the Spanish arrived in 1519, they saw the Great Temple as an affront to their god, a symbol of paganism and idolatry. The conquistadors, led by Cortez, who had been gifted a magnificent feathered serpent headdress by the Aztec king Moctezuma, attacked and destroyed the city. The treasures of gold and silver were shipped back to Spain, and the Great Temple was dismantled, stone by stone. Shrines and staircases were torn down, altars smashed, and offerings burned. Nothing was to remain of Tenochtitlan's greatest monument. The conquerors built their new city directly atop the sacred ruins. A cathedral was erected close by, as if to guard the site of the old one. A new religion replacing the old, a new order replacing the old, and for centuries, the Templo Mayor was lost, buried, silent, and forgotten. But in the late 20th century, an electrical company crew was digging a trench near the city's center. They were laying pipes to bring electricity to the surrounding buildings. But what they struck was not pipe or stone. It was something monumental, a huge stone carving. It depicted a naked woman lying on her back, with her legs spread wide, her arms at her sides and hands turned upwards. In pre-Columbian art, such a pose was highly unusual. Who was she? Why was she carved in stone? And why was she buried deep beneath the earth? Soon, archaeologists arrived and realized they were standing on one of the most significant sites in the Americas. After 23 years of careful work, careful excavation, it was finally revealed. The Great Temple. The process of excavating the site was unlike anything seen before. With such a prominent location in the heart of the city, excavations were impossible. So instead, the archaeologists decided to build the museum around the site. Built between the ruins, it allowed visitors to view the discoveries as they uncovered them. To get to the temple, you now need to go through the museum itself, which has been specially designed to blend in with the site. As you move through the rooms, you can peer over walkways to see the remains of the pyramids, the sacrificial altars, the carvings, and the layers of history below. As you descend deeper into the earth, you begin to uncover the secrets of the ancient city. The team discovered 5 distinct levels of occupation, 5 different eras of activity. Beneath the remains of the Great Temple, even older artifacts were found, including shards of early Mesoamerican pottery dating back almost 2,000 years to the earliest settlers of the Valley of Mexico. At the deepest level, there was evidence of nomadic camps from 700 BC. These settlements eventually became the major city of Tenochtitlan, home to over 400,000 people. The discovery of the Great Temple changed our understanding of pre-Hispanic culture. The civilization that created it was much more advanced than previously thought. Its achievements, influence, and legacy extended far beyond the Aztec Empire. Here are some of the highlights of what was found at the site. Coyolxauhqui, the goddess of the moon. She appears in many forms throughout the site, most notably the three-tinned statue found in 1978. It depicts her with limbs contorted and spread out in an unnatural position. This was likely done to represent her dismemberment by her son, the god of the sun, after she conceived him without his father. Though it's a violent tale, it was clearly a revered one, as the image of the wounded mother goddess was a potent symbol of life and rebirth. Next to the carving of Coyolxauhqui was another large statue, this one showing a kneeling figure facing a kneeling woman holding a flower. The kneeling figure is believed to be serpents, whether carved into the stone or molded from clay. Snakes are found everywhere at the site. They seem to rise from every crack and crevice, coiling around the corners and writhing along the stairs. But they're not simply decorative. They were symbols of power, protection, and healing. The Aztecs associated them with the gods of rain, fertility, and earthquakes. The site contains hundreds of skulls arranged in racks called des. They were used to display the skulls of those who had been sacrificed, possibly to discourage future worshippers from offering themselves up to the gods. But there is evidence that some of the skulls belonged to those who died during the Spanish siege of 1520. Blades. Thousands of tiny razor-sharp blades were crafted from obsidian, the hardest natural glass known to man. Over 600 of these blades were found at the site, mostly along the stairway leading to the summit. But the presence of the blades didn't necessarily indicate a particularly violent ritual. Rather, it suggests that bloodletting was practiced at the site. Bloodletting was common among the Aztecs, and was seen as a way of balancing the body's humors. It was often done in preparation for a religious festival and involved pricking the skin with a needle or scraping the flesh with a sharp tool. Jade. Dozens of fine examples of pre-Columbian jade were discovered at the site. The jade was likely brought from Guatemala as a tribute to the gods. Jade was highly valued by the Aztecs, who believed it was the most beautiful and valuable material in the world. They used it to make jewelry, ornaments, statues, and weapons. Offerings. Crocodile bones were discovered along with remnants of other animals such as jaguars, eagles, monkeys, and turkeys. The animal offerings were likely intended to show the gods that the Aztecs were willing to give them the best, no matter how dangerous or elusive the creature was. The Templo Mayor was more than just a temple. It was the axis mundi, the center of the universe, the point where the underworld met the sky, the present met the past, and the sacred met the ordinary. In its shadow, the Aztec Empire flourished and fell. And now, beneath the bustling streets of Mexico City, it awaits rediscovery. So if you ever visit Mexico City, be sure to pay a visit to the Templo Mayor. Take a stroll through the ruins and marvel at the ingenuity and artistry of the ancient Aztecs. Who knows what secrets they might have left behind. In this episode, we are going back to the great city of Tenochtitlan, capital of the Aztec Empire, and exploring the magnificent world of its nobles. If you're new here, welcome to my channel. I bring you new videos about ancient cultures every week. Click that subscribe button to join the community. Now let's jump into the sights, sounds, smells, textures, and tastes of 5th-10th century Mexico. We now leave the market's dust and the temple's stone behind. The drums are softer here. The voice is quieter. The floor beneath your feet is smoother, swept clean by silent attendants. You've entered a different world, the inner sanctum of Aztec nobility, a place apart from the clamor of the city. This is the royal court of home of the Tlatoani, the he who speaks, the supreme ruler of the empire. The palace is not one building, but a sprawling compound. Dozens of rooms, gardens, fountains, courtyards, walls painted with mythic scenes, roofs supported by wooden beams carved with serpents and stars, and everywhere, the subtle scent of burning coppola sacred resin, rising like breath toward the gods. As a guest, you move cautiously. No one speaks above a whisper unless summoned. You are surrounded by feathered guards, scribes, priests, and chosen noble sons, many of whom are barely past childhood but already trained in poetry, law, and war. A young boy recites a verse to his teacher, not with joy, but with solemn precision. Life is like a flower, brief and soon to fall. In this world, art and power are deeply intertwined. Every act, every word, every garment is weighed with meaning. To dress in green quetzal feathers or turquoise mosaics is not vanity, it is privilege, reserved only for the few. You're led to a hall where the emperor holds court. He sits on a raised seat, surrounded by golden discs and obsidian mirrors. He does not speak first. Instead, attendants deliver messages from distant cities, reports of tribute received, cacao beans, jaguar pelts, bundles of cloth, turquoise, obsidian, copper bells. This tribute is what fuels court life. While peasants toil in fields and canals, the elite dine on tamales stuffed with iguana meat, sip hot chocolate spiced with chili, and wear cotton robes so fine they shimmer like water in sunlight. But luxury comes with pressure. Every noble is expected to be both learned and fierce, to compose poetry and lead warriors, to judge fairly and fear the gods. A single misstep, a poorly chosen word, a missed omen, and favor can vanish. You are taken to the royal garden next. It is not just a place of beauty, but a living symbol of the empire's reach. Plants from all corners of the Mexico world grow here. Vanilla orchids from the east, prickly pears from the north, medicinal herbs from the mountain. A monkey screeches softly from a tree. An attendant offers you a bowl carved from obsidian. Inside is frothy cacao, bitter and dark, stirred with maize and flowers. It is said to strengthen the heart and clear the mind. Nearby, a scribe dips a brush made of maguey fiber into a bowl of black ink. He is copying names, tributes, omens. His work will be stored in codices books, made of deer hide or bark, folded like accordions. Everything must be remembered. The emperor walks the garden path in silence, surrounded by priests. He does not smile. His crown, a fan of shimmering green feathers, casts long shadows in the sun. His eyes are distant already on the next sacrifice, the next omen, the next war. You bow, low, and long. When ye rise, he is gone, and the garden returns to stillness. Here, at the highest echelon of Aztec society, the burdens of power are just as heavy as those of poverty. The robes are finer, the food richer, the air more perfumed, but fear lingers still. Fear of losing favor, fear of bad omens, fear of the gods. Power was not protection. It was performance, a fragile stage, set before the heavens. And as the sky darkens over the city of a single conch shell sounds from the temple, another ritual begins. Another offering must be made. Even here, in the royal court, no one sleeps without listening for the gods. Aztec nobles lived in a world of exquisite beauty, fine fabrics, rare foods, and manicured gardens, but their lives were far from easy. They had to balance the expectations of their position with the demands of their religion. The threat of war always hung over them. So while there were many privileges that came with being an Aztec noble, there were also many pitfalls. Let's look at some of these in more detail. First, let's talk about the finer things in life. The food was probably the best in the city. We know that the Aztec Emperor Moctezuma II liked to eat iguana meat. Iguanas were probably brought to the city from the nearby lake, where they were plentiful. They would have been cooked in a variety of ways, including being stuffed with beans and herbs, and then baked in an earthen oven. Nobles also ate a lot of chocolate. In fact, it was said that Moctezuma drank 50 pots of chocolate a day. Of course, the chocolate of the Aztecs was very different from the chocolate of today. It was bitter and spicy, often mixed with chili peppers. Nobles also ate lots of fruit, including mangoes, avocados, and bananas. They also kept their bodies adorned with tattoos and piercings. The most common tattoos were of the warrior type, showing that the person had been in battle and had fought bravely. Piercings were also popular, and the most common places for them were the nose, ears, and lips. Another privilege of being a noble was having access to beautiful clothing made of rare materials such as quetzal, feathers, and gold thread. The finest clothes were reserved for the emperor and his family, but other nobles could also afford to dress very well. Cliffing was not only a way to show off one's wealth, but also a way to show loyalty to the empire. Each province had its own style of clothing, and this helped to create a sense of unity among the diverse peoples of the Aztec Empire. However, the life of an Aztec noble was not all luxury. There was a lot of pressure to live up to the high standards of their position. Nobles were expected to be both powerful and spiritual, and they had to learn the skills of both the warrior and the priest. They also had to be able to manage their estates in the provinces when they were called away on business of the empire. Being a noble was a full-time job. The life of an Aztec noblewoman was somewhat different, but she too had many privileges and duties. Noble women were typically married off to other nobles in order to form alliances between families. She would have her own separate household and would be responsible for managing her husband's estate in his absence. Women were also expected to be experts in the art of weaving, and were often given looms as gifts. In addition to their regular duties, noblewomen also had to participate in religious ceremonies and festivals. They would have been in charge of making sure that the appropriate sacrifices were made, and that the correct rituals were followed. Women could also be influential in courtly politics, and were often advisors to their husbands. While the life of an Aztec noble was undoubtedly privileged, it was also dangerous. There was always the threat of war, not only from outside the empire, but also from within. Nobles were often caught up in the power struggles between the various factions in the empire, and they had to be careful to stay on the right side of the emperor. If you made a powerful enemy at court, your head might be the next to roll. The pressure to conform to the high standards of Aztec culture was also intense. Nobles had to be perfect examples of how all subjects of the empire should behave. If you made a mistake, it would reflect badly not only on you, but on your family and your entire province. The life of an Aztec noble was a difficult one, but it was also a noble one. They were the elite of society, and were expected to live up to the highest standards. They had the privilege of living in luxury and participating in important religious ceremonies, but they also had to deal with the constant pressure of keeping up appearances and the threat of violence. I hope you enjoyed this look at the life of an Aztec noble. What did you find most interesting about their lifestyle? Let me know in the comments below, and if you haven't done so yet, please subscribe to my channel. Thanks for watching. See you next time.